Everyone's talking about the new twins and perk updates. How do you feel about not being able to D-pip anymore? Behavior made it... Isn't the ranking system... Doesn't it have no bearing on matchmaking? The only thing it really affects is how many blood points you gain. Yeah, it's literally just blood points. Since it has nothing to do with skill-based matchmaking, it's fine. As long as they keep it the way it is. Getting red 1 was a nice feather in your cap. Why? Okay, how about this? Why do you think behavior is getting rid of the ability to D-pip? Like if you were in behavior's shoes and you were to like boil down the reasoning for why they were doing that, what would be the explanation that you'd have? Feels like a participation trophy to make having bad games not feel so punishing. That is just for blood points. So it's basically essentially to make the losing experience more bearable. But I wonder if that kind of sucks the sense of progression out of the system. If when you die, there's nothing at stake, right? You guys are making me want to read the patch notes. Like it's kind of similar to how behavior made it so that ranks don't mean anything with matchmaking, right? So when you decorrelate ranks and emblem and like all that stuff to the skill-based matchmaking, it kind of removes a sense of purpose and the feeling that you get when you win or lose. It kind of numbs the experience of playing the game itself. It'll also help split the sweaty players from the chill casual players. Well, the thing is that the pip system has no bearing on skill-based matchmaking. It's just purely for blood points. The only thing it impacts is the impact of sense of accomplishment players feel whether they survive or die. So if behavior believes their community is too sensitive and can't take losses well, they just remove that feeling of negativity from D-pipping. But in a sense, losing and dying matters much less. You're slowly creating an existential crisis for the reason of like, why should I care if I die or not if I don't lose a pip? What's the repercussions if I die? Like Lethal Company, you die, you lose all your items. You lose all your progress. In Minecraft, you die, you drop all your items. And the items will despawn. What's the punishment for dying? What's the punishment for losing? Well, we don't want people to feel bad when they die or lose. Well, then the game starts losing its purpose. DBD is like Dead by Daylight. You want dying to feel bad because you die. You want killing survivor. You want like surviving to feel good because they survived, right? DBD, you lose items too? Yeah. But I'm just talking about like the infantification of the gameplay loop. Like this might be seen as like a slippery slope. To remove the punishments or I guess like slowly remove like the punishment for dying or something. It kind of makes the game a lot more baby proof. But I mean, is that their audience? It's just kind of like you know, in the end here when they used to show ranks and the ranks correlated to your matchmaking. Well, now when they changed to skill-based matchmaking, they don't even show your MMR. And behavior's reasoning for not showing the MMR is like...
having a visible MMR is something that will absolutely lead to a lot of toxic elitism, and we don't want to encourage that kind of mentality in the community.
Yeah, we also have to acknowledge that there's some people out there who don't want to see that number. Some people get stressed out when they have a bad match and they see that go down, and it just really upsets them.
Well, we don't want people to like bully each other and be like, I have a higher MMR than you, so I'm better than you. Because that would lead to toxicity, right? It's like, let's take out the sense of purpose for the ranks and the emblems, and let's take out the sense of purpose for D-pipping and losing. It's like the slow infantification of the gameplay loop to try to coddle to a sensitive gameplay player mindset. And maybe this is part of a little bit part of the reason why some people may think the game is stale, because it's essentially stripping the sense of purpose from the outcome of a match. Because you play this game to either survive or die. You play this game to kill all the survivors or get foreman outed. When we touch variables that give the sense of purpose towards the objectives, even if it is just for blood points, we run the risk of making our game more and more stale. It's great for blood point gain. The only negative that can be seen, the feeling of progression people feel, and the fact that their actions react to the game itself. Like if you do well, you get rewarded. If you do poorly, you get punished. And that push and pull dynamic is what keeps the players playing in the game, as it gives them a sense of progression. And this is something that Gaben said.
And I've never thought to myself that realism is fun. I go play games to have fun. And so we had to come up with some notion of what fun was. We knew it was an ad hoc definition, and it was the degrees to which the game recognizes and responded to the player's choices and actions, right? You know, in behavioral science, you would say we're explicitly talking about what were reinforcers and what the reinforcement schedules were, right? At that point in time, that was a useful way of making design decisions. The point I would make is, if I go up to a wall and shoot it, to me it feels like the wall is ignoring me. I'm getting a narcissistic injury when the world is ignoring me. So it is like, to me, I was trying to convey to the user a sense of, yes, you were making choices, yes, you were progressing, which meant the game had to acknowledge that back to you. If you shoot at a wall, there have to be decals. If you kill a bunch of Marines, the Marines have to run away from you, right? You have to have this sense of the game acknowledging and responding to the choices and actions and progressions that you've made. Otherwise, it loses any sort of impact.
I wonder if there's an issue where the impact of killer or survivor games are losing their sense of purpose, which is correlative to how people feel about the game as a whole. Not just skill-based matchmaking, but the reason for why we play this game. It feels like Behavior is making a lot of changes to the game to try to cater towards a very sensitive audience. People who cannot really take losing on the chin. And I feel like they're trying to run away from the identity of what made their game popular in the first place. So, like, let's say, like, for instance, it all started with the chat filter. Simple enough. You can't curse to the killer. You can't say that you hate the killer and that you're going to, like, you know, sit on their face and, like, take a dunk on them. And then there was Mori spam. They got rid of the ability to Mori spam. And that's something that I think one of their Fog Whisperers lost their Fog Whisper status to. There's like this essence of humiliation, just kind of like that psychologist video I covered. There's a lot of joy that people derive by being like the dominatrix to the survivors. Like people like feeling like they're the power role, and they like to overbear over someone that's really weak. It makes them feel powerful, and that's why they play killer. And then there's people that play survivor, and they like being the underdog. They have less power, and they're against an unstoppable force, and it's against impossible odds. They have to try to beat someone who can just crush them instantaneously. You can't even say kill. Yeah. So there was this essence, right, of humiliation. Let's call it humiliation. And it is essentially psychopathy. Psychopathy is using another person for your own enjoyment. So the pain and suffering of the survivors is the enjoyment of the killer. The pain and suffering of the killer is the enjoyment of the survivors. Wow, get wrecked, scrub. You suck at the game. You got 0 kills, right? And slowly but surely, Behavior has been removing those elements because that's inherently toxic. That's inherently toxic and evil, let's say. Psychopathy is like people act like psychopaths and they could care less about empathy. They only care about themselves. But I feel like by slowly removing and watering down the elements of the game of like bad manners, toxicity, talking, you kind of ruin the reason why people like played the game in the first place. by removing this this sense of like the power dynamic of overbearing force, underdog force, and like their ability to humiliate each other, you kind of strip the emotion out of the gameplay loop again, which also takes away from the sense of purpose from winning and losing the match. That's also part of the reason why people are like, why are people say the game's so stale? Why do people say the game is like boring here and there? Well, it's because behavior is slowly stripping out the toxic parts of the game. And behavior wants to kind of distance themselves from that because that's inherently like toxic, it's evil. But I think that's fundamentally the reason why people play their game in the first place. They remove all the fun things too. Like I honestly, this is a weird take. I think toxicity is part of the reason why people play this game. Like when I played Survivor, and like let's say a killer calls me a piece of sh**, and the killer tunnels me and hits me on the hook, I laugh. I piss the killer off. It's funny. Same thing with while playing killer. If the survivors call me a hacker or say that I suck and that like I think it's just funny, you know? I know that's kind of like toxic and like that's like psychopathic behavior, weird champ, but like I feel like that's part of the fun. And since behavior has been slowly but surely removing the elements where people can become toxic by adding like filters and like removing the ability to see the MMR of a survivor so people don't compare themselves to each other.
Toxic elitism, and we don't want to encourage that kind of mentality.
It removes the feeling, the reason that people play a match. Slowly but surely, bit by bit, piece by piece, part by part. And I feel like the developers don't see that because they're too worried about the feelings of their player base rather than the experience of their player base. Like, to the developers, what matters more to them is how the players feel emotionally rather than the overall experience of playing their game in the first place. A lot of people have gotten more sensitive, for a lack of a better word, about a healthy amount of toxicity in games like DBD. I feel like you need to have a certain level of toxicity allowance in your game for your game to be fun. Because if you remove all the elements of where you could be toxic in a player versus player interaction, you kind of restrict, straitjacket your players in what's possible and what they can do. And that in essence removes the joy from the game over time. I think that's inherently part of human psychology. It's kind of like the reason why some people like seeing cheaters get banned, because it's like karma, justice. Like this guy was being a POS and they're getting punished for it, right? We get to see the offender, the bad guy, get punished. And that's why some people on Survivor, like they do a lot of Survivor content, like bullying the killer and like there used to be people who just D-rank and just bully baby killers. And it's an evil that is necessary, I feel. And the developers are running away from that for the sake of trying to protect the sanity of their player base, but they don't realize that they're hurting their game more than helping it. A concerned parent seeing the toxicity, getting upset and loud. This is what the term I used earlier. I called it the infantification of Dead by Daylight, or the infantification of gaming, where they feel like where the game developers don't have enough faith that their community can take the pain of losing, can take the pain of getting hurt. But we're playing, but for goodness sake, we're playing a killing game where a killer is killing the survivors, whether they live or die. So, in the context of a video game, removing those elements to try to coddle towards feelings is a sacrifice of fun or emotional pleasure. It's just a strange mindset. I can't have fun in the game unless you can bully people in the game, or say we should normalize bullying because it's fun. It seems wrong to you. The issue is like this is a player versus player environment. So I'm not saying that we should normalize it, but I think that removing like everything in the name of trying to make sure that people can't be like toxic can ultimately water down the experience if we go too far. So if we constantly remove what people think are toxic over and over and over again, then this also leads to another thing where what's toxic, it moves with how people feel. The word bullying is used generally now. It's not like the normalization of, I'd say, bullying, but the prevention of disrespecting and patronizing our player base by treating them like babies. To not have enough faith to think that our community can take a little negativity, to the point where we treat them like infants, hence the infantification of gaming. Because if we coddle towards the infant player, then we treat our entire community as a sea of infants, a sea of children, and our player base will feel that. And at the end of the day, you have to ask the question, do you want to play a game where the game developers treat you like a baby? This community cannot handle the negativity. So the real question is if the community cannot handle the negativity, should we treat the Dead by Daylight player base as a game from the perspective of a game developer as a sea of infants? Should behavior treat their community like children and infants? I think that at its core, as a game developer, you're put in this dilemma, and then pretend your behavior. You need to make this decision. This is a really core decision you need to make. What do you do? Lots of gamers are infants. So the answer could very well be yes. I hope I'm wrong about that.